Next, children's health is in steep decline. That's the message from a study last week published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. It found that the health of children in the United States has significantly deteriorated across nearly every major health indicator over the past 17 years. Similar concerns were echoed in the Health and Human Services Make Our Children Healthy Again report, which came out in May. And we're joined now to discuss the report and what you and your family can do to reverse the trend in your own way by Sheridan Genrich, a naturopath and health reporter with the Epoch Times. Sheridan, good to have you with us this morning. Thanks for coming on so early. Let's start with what are the 4 main drivers of childhood chronic disease, which are identified in the Make Our Children Healthy Again report by the federal government.
Hi, Steph. Yeah, the 4 drivers that came out of this report were, unsurprisingly, poor diet as number 1, mainly from ultra-processed foods. And the second one was the cumulative exposure to food additives and chemicals and preservatives in the kids' food. The third one was lack of physical activity and chronic stress. And the fourth was the over-medicalization of childhood conditions, so too many prescriptions and vaccines. That's where the next step is around strategies, which will come out in August.
And we look forward to discussing that and looking into that further. But let's look at ultra-processed foods, or UPFs. They're considered a significant problem for children's health. Why is that?
Yeah, right. The report actually revealed that nearly 70% of children's calories are coming from ultra-processed foods. So these are foods that have hidden added sugars, unhealthy fats, and salt. And they're highly addictive and super delicious. So it's really hard for kids to use willpower alone. They're also lacking in essential nutrients like vitamins and minerals and fiber. And these foods are basically, if you're trying to identify them, think of chips, pretzels, packaged snacks, and sugary drinks. Things that you don't necessarily automatically have as basic ingredients in your home.
Hopefully not, but it is pretty prevalent, as you've noted, 70%. That's pretty high. So how can parents and caregivers identify ultra-processed foods? If you give us some more examples, does it mean everything that's packaged?
Yeah, that's the key part. So if you think of raw foods, which is basically fruit and vegetables, meat, fish, eggs, okay, they're not processed. Then you've got minimally processed, which things like milk, olive oil, butter, things that you would need to make consumable and need a little bit of processing. And then the ultra-processed foods are really the ones that have those basic ingredients that wouldn't necessarily be found in your home kitchen. Things like food stabilizers, enhancers, artificial sweeteners, preservatives, thickening agents, and bulking agents. And they go through a lot of heat and packaging, and it's the really making this so refined and really easy to digest, but extremely inflammatory for our digestive system, whether we're kids or adults. It's not something we're designed or have even had in our past history in our human diet.
What's the impact of all of this on kids' health?
So it disrupts their satiety signals, meaning how full they're going to feel. And when they're filling up on these processed foods that all their friends are doing as well, then they're not wanting healthy foods. So they're already full, and then they develop nutrient deficiencies because their bodies still need the healthier foods. And it's a vicious cycle. So then the kids aren't necessarily going to be motivated by avoiding chronic disease, but thinking about not only just how they look, and I wouldn't start there, but how they feel is really critical when you're trying to motivate children to not have the terrible long-term consequences. So how they feel is really important, and making it interesting and fun. So I can give you some tips as well.
Oh, I'd love to hear that, because this is such an important point. You know, children do have their own autonomy, and enforcing this may not be the most practical way forward. So what practical steps can families take to kind of reduce consumption of UPFs and promote healthier eating habits at home?
Yeah, and it does start with at home. Controlling the environment is easier than controlling the willpower. That's just not going to happen with children. And so having good modelling starts before the kids are really teenagers. I'm a mum of a teenager, and it gets much, much harder as they are spending more time away from home. So having good habits at home is really important. Availability of, deliciously cooked vegetables, maybe roasted veggies with butter. And yeah, butter is okay for you. A little bit of salt if they're not eating any processed packaged foods. The dose makes the poison. So limiting the amount of ultra processed foods is making sure that the bulk of their meals are coming from real wholesome foods. And it's just noticing that they might get a tummy ache or a headache if they do go to a party and they eat a lot of junk food, and helping the kids make the connections for themselves, because it's really, we're all a product of our habits. And then the other one is, I teach my son how to read nutrition labels. So, because when they can read a label and identify for themselves, it's almost like empowering them to be able to say, oh, I actually know the difference between right and wrong. And then they can apply this much quicker as well. Things like vegetables don't come with labels, and that's even better. Even if it's fruits, but looking at things that come from nature is really easier to start with as well.
All right, thank you so much for your time this morning, Sheridan Genrich. Good to speak with you.
Thanks for having me, Steph.